On November 8th of 2022, the Walt Disney Company hosted its final earnings call for the 2022 fiscal year. And just about a day later, notorious Hollywood insider Kamran Pasha had a leak on his Patreon page from a Disney insider. And that leak stated that layoffs and hiring freezes were coming imminently. And then less than 48 hours later, those leaks were confirmed via the major trades when Disney announced officially that those layoffs and hiring freezes were indeed coming, something of Bob Chapek and Christine McCarthy's design, at least allegedly. Of course, less than 2 weeks after that, Bob Chapek was unceremoniously fired on the spot as he was on the ground at an Elton John concert in Los Angeles, being replaced by former CEO and executive chairman Robert Iger. Now, since then, we haven't heard much more about what these layoffs would look like, but it seems that it has begun to happen. And Kamran Pasha is back again with some more information that he's gotten from some of his sources at the Walt Disney Company. He's joining us today, along with WDW Pro of ThatParkPlace.com, to discuss the updates. Let's get into it. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back, folks. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And of course, if you're like one of the many folks that might be watching this video, not yet subscribed to the channel, please turn that little red subscribe button to gray, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias. Like button's always a good thing, too. And of course, please do leave a comment below the video before you head out the door today. I am joined with two of this channel's most favorite guests, as per audience polling that we've never did. We just know that you like these two guys. WDW
well, I was feeling really good if there was actual polling on this. I was like, Kamran, we've done it. We've climbed the mountain.
I'm going purely by chat response, but WDW Pro from That Park Place and Kamran Pasha joining us once again. And we brought Kamran in today because he had a great scoop several months ago on the Disney layoffs and the hiring freezes that were coming down the pike. This was in between the Disney earnings call on November 8th and, of course, the now famous night of ejection of one Mr. Robert Chapek on November 20th. And Kamran, you had a scoop about 48 hours before the public media and the trades did on this with the hiring freezes and the layoffs, which were then announced shortly thereafter. And you have a bit of an update on this. You've gotten some news from some of these same sources that passed along some of this earlier tidbit of information on Disney. So go ahead and tell everybody about it. Make sure y'all checking out Kamran Pasha on his Patreon page. Of course, the link will be in the description to this video below. But Kamran, take it away.
Well, first of all, thank you, Valiant. Thank you, Pro, for having me on. We're very interesting times. A lot is happening. A lot of unexpected things are happening. And so I received a message from one of my top sources whose comments have been verified publicly, because I have a lot of sources who have said things that, are the events are still in the shadows. And so there's debate over whether those things are happening or not. And that's fair. One does not have to believe everything that one has said. One does not have to believe everything I report. However, these two sources that I have indeed, as Valiant mentioned, given me some major scoops that were then publicly verified by the mainstream news organizations. The person that reached out to me is the one, in this instance, is the one that gave me the very first scoop, which ended up being the events that set a lot of things in motion that we're facing today, which was it's been a year now. I felt like it was almost exactly a year ago, where Bob Chapek had put out that memo where he said, we're going to essentially, it's time to move out of politics. We're not going to get involved in Florida's various, legal bills and all this stuff. And then there was a massive uproar from the wokesters inside of Disney and the wokesters inside of Hollywood saying that he's betraying the values of Disney or the woke values of themselves, right? And he had been forced under pressure to pull back. That memo that created a whole session of drama that many would suggest is one of the reasons we are where we are today, was released to me by this source, who is a Disney employee, several hours before Variety reported it. They basically came into their office that morning, they got the memo, and then they sent it to me, and I happened to I'm not an early morning person, but I happened to wake up early that morning, and I got this memo sent to me by message. I was like, wow, okay. So basically, this is pretty shocking that Bob Chapek is publicly going to state that we need to get out of politics. And I didn't. I looked. No trade had reported it. So I said, I'm taking a risk here. Am I being taken for a ride? Which is what all of us face, right? As we're trying to report information, we have sources we trust. We sometimes wonder: are they taking us for a ride? Are they being taken for a ride? Or do they just not have all the information? These are the risks that we face, right? Unless we have multiple sources confirming something. So I had this one source who's giving me a memo that they have on their desk. So I said, you know what? I got to try it. I put it out there with a warning. This is just one source, and then put it out there. And 1 hour later, Variety reported word for word the memo I had received. So that confirmed, number one, this person actually does work for Disney in the position that they had told me they did, and they had access to memos from Bob Chapek, right? And so that was all confirmed. And so this particular person reached out to me yesterday with news, and you can bring it up on screen, but I'll read it. I'm happy to read it.
Yeah, let's bring it up.
Let's bring it up, and we can read it together. But so this is the scoop that I put out on my Patreon just yesterday, and this person will then give evidence to support this. So again, it's not just something they're claiming that we just have to take their word for or argue about, because the evidence was then within the message they sent me. So I'm going to read this message. So, quote, Disney layoffs have begun, and you'll find this very interesting. First affected departments: recruiting, talent acquisition, and diversity and inclusion. And then he's asking me, didn't we discuss that the Chapek regime was starting to prepare the field for layoffs in HR? This was something I reported on my Patreon last late summer, early fall. You might remember, Valiant, that they had been giving me information that people inside HR were being let go by Chapek first, because and we had this conversation that generally when corporations want to restructure allegiances within a company, they need to fix HR first to make sure HR is allied with the new regime, so that they can clean out people that are not on board. I think we've had that conversation at that time. So this is what this person is referring to. And so they all go on to say, it's also very telling that they're firing people over at DEL, I guess DEI. It almost tells itself. This basically is an admission of how bad the woke infection is. Everyone, now this is important. I didn't really know this, but they're speaking from inside of their division within Disney. Everyone thought they were going to start over at DMED to trim the payroll according to the new structure set by Iger, quote unquote. But they're starting at HR and diversity inclusion. And if we think about recruiting, talent acquisition, that's part of HR, right? It's recruiting, right? That's part of HR. So they're continuing what Bob Chapek, we know, or at least was claimed last summer, was starting to do, which is clean up HR. So this is a continuation of Bob Chapek's plan, not a new plan from Iger. And this is clearly a surprise, because this person is saying everyone in their company thought they were going to start over at DMED and payroll, because that seemed to be where the directive was from Bob Iger's most recent information of that he's doing these cuts. So now this person goes on to say, it is so telling that one of the people that who's laid off, and they say, I'm not happy whenever people lose their jobs, but says that her priority is diversity. Gosh. So in what context is this source claiming someone said that? Well, they go on to explain. They then sent links to 4 of their colleagues inside the company at Disney, who had already publicly the same day, that morning, had put out on LinkedIn their personal sort of sad story that they had been let go. And each of these people had come from one of these divisions that the source refers to. And one of them had been talking about, please hire me. I'm all about diversity, right? And that's why they were let go, apparently. So just that, before we even get to the LinkedIn article, just that piece that the source said, without any corroboration, is in and of itself fascinating, right? Is in and of itself would suggest that the thesis that I have presented for some time, that Bob Iger, however he got there, Bob Iger is continuing the legacy of Bob Chapek and the plan of Bob Chapek, not revamping it, not throwing it away, not as many people in Hollywood assumed. When Bob Iger returned, there was that afternoon, I know because I was getting emails from fellow colleagues, writers in Hollywood, a collective sigh of relief in the industry. That crazy, meanie, old nutball Bob Chapek is out. We're going to be back to business as usual with Bob Iger. He's going to stop all these crazy cuts and getting rid of our people, right? People who share our values, all that. That was the presumption. And then within a few days, that presumption started petering away as Bob Iger continued to say, well, I think we're all going to do some cuts. And then he had his first town hall, said, we're going to have to maybe, we have our values, but maybe not everybody in America shares those values, right? And he gave that sort of unusual conversation because that wasn't the tone he had taken before, with the employees saying, well, maybe we have to adjust to telling the stories in a way that America wants to hear them. And then it accelerated to the point where just a couple of weeks ago, this massive punch to Hollywood's gut of 7,000 employees being cut and $3 billion of non-sports related,
Content cuts.
Yeah, yes, content costs are being cut, right? So that was not just a punch to the gut. That was like slitting Hollywood's throat. They felt betrayed. If you look at the comments on the trades articles, the outrage and the shock and the betrayal is because this was Chapek's plan. So this guy just going ahead and do Chapek's plan. So again, the mystery remains why Chapek was removed, for somebody to come in and just do what the guy said he was going to do, right? Fine. That's a mystery that will hopefully one day be resolved. But this, in and of itself, on its own, was like, wow, okay, he really is going, Iger's really sticking with the original plan, which is to clean DEI. I remember, Pro and Valiant, I think we talked about this before. People initially thought that Iger's return was a victory for the DEI people, that he was going to protect them, right? That was the presumption in Hollywood. And
the people he put in place to begin with. Yeah.
Correct.
And they were useful tools for his political ambitions. They're no longer useful. So therefore, he's going to follow through on this purge. And, this really goes into just what a toxic environment these people have created. Whether or not they find themselves to be virtuous, they have created an environment where it's very difficult to be successful as a creative company trying to cater to children, families, etc. And if you're Iger, you've got to get rid of these people because they'll eat you alive too. That's all they know how to do. He's a white male.
Yeah. Well, it's the old, it's the old Trotskyite eternal revolution, right? Where no matter, the revolution never ends. There's always some new person that has to be overthrown. And Stalin realized that, and Stalin said, oh yeah, Trotsky's going to come for me. Well, I'll take care of that. And one ice pick in the head and he was done, right? That took care of it. So that's the mindset of eternal revolutionaries. At some point, the people who use the eternal revolutionary needs to get rid of the eternal revolutionary, because then they're going to come for you.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, why didn't this start with DMED as you would have expected? And for those that may have forgotten, DMED is the division that Bob Chapek created. That's Disney Media and Entertainment Distribution. That's the division that was put into effect with Chapek's top lieutenant that was fired 12 hours after Chapek was, Kareem Daniel. And one would have thought that when Iger came in, he talked about publicly how DMED was basically going to be the first thing that he was going to unwind, which literally, as I said, began 12 hours after they fired Chapek with Kareem Daniel. And now, these layoffs are, as you mentioned, they don't seem to be coming from DMED as one would have expected. They're restructuring back to the design that Iger had left in place when he went away. Well, sort of went away, of course. But that's not where he's trimming. So who are these folks out there? I mean, what are you hearing on that? And who are these folks? How does this all fit together?
Well, so that's what the statement that this person sent out. That in and of itself is interesting. But then they went on to provide evidence by sending these LinkedIn things. So why don't we take a look at some of these LinkedIn articles here? And these are, again, we wish no one ill. I don't know these people. I'm sure they're perfectly nice people. They have mouths to feed. They have families to feed. Nobody wants anyone terminated from their job. Neither did those source take any pleasure in this, right? We're just going to read their statements to understand the kinds of issues that are happening and the people that are being targeted in this motion. And that's all. We're not going to make any judgment about, some people may be happy that they're let go. We take no pleasure in anyone losing their job. We're just going to go into and analyzing it. Magic maker, people person, DEI advocate, and also, interesting enough, proud Native American and Latina. You would think in an environment that is supposedly about protecting all minorities and letting go of the white man, this person would be safe. Regrettably, do not seem to be safe. So let's see what she said. Quote, unfortunately, the first round of Disney layoffs have begun primarily on the talent acquisition recruiting DEI. So talent acquisition recruiting is HR, human resources.
Right, so hold there for a minute,
Yes.
Kamran,
Yes.
because I want to say this. If you are Iger, and if you're looking for a way to be able to get rid of the toxic people that are in your company that you put there, who are destroying your opportunities to be successful, one of the ways that you can do this and offload some of the criticism that you'll receive is if you let go of the people who are in talent acquisition and recruiting, because you can say, well, we're in a downsizing period right now. So therefore, we don't need the same number of personnel for acquisition and recruiting. We're not hiring at the levels that we were previously. So that, I think, is sort of how he's navigating this.
That's how you can justify that. But then the next sentence is DEI. Well, that's a little more problematic in the political environment that Hollywood has fostered in the last decade. So talent acquisition, recruiting, DEI, and contracted side of things. Again, you could justify the talent acquisition, you could justify contractors. We're downsizing. We don't need as many external contractors, right? DEI is supposedly the soul of current Hollywood, right? It's the ethics and the culture. Okay.
I just find it's interesting you would put that in your byline of your LinkedIn description, DEI advocate. What on earth? I mean, you have to be, I mean, LinkedIn is a professional website. These people obviously know, well, if I put this in my byline, then it's going to attract more prospective employers in this industry.
Correct.
Oh, no, Valiant. You see, Chrissy Berrigan, she is already outdated. She is so 2000 late because she has left off the B for belonging. She needs to be a DEIB advocate.
Oh.
Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
Oh, is that
Get
new?
with it, Chrissy. Get with it. Come on.
Just like POC became by POC.
That's right.
What language always evolves. The language is never
That's
settled.
right. They're slowly.
Words have no meaning.
Yeah, it's constant.
what
They're
they have
slowly
to
trying to acquire the entire alphabet. Once they do that, we're moving to numbers, folks. And by George, once those are gone, it's your hyphens and your commas and your semicolons. They're coming for your colons.
So it appears Ms. Berrigan, her
She's
position
nice.
is safe for now, but she is at least trying to highlight other people's struggles. But she has said the important things. We have 4 links that the source sent. This is the first one, which has said, which has confirmed that the first round of these layoffs is in HR and in DEI, as the source said, and cast members. Her position had been to at least push for people of various origins to play those roles, right? Various, diverse origins. And she's very concerned that it seems that is no longer what's happening. And a lot of those people are being let go who had been brought in under DEI initiatives. So that's first confirmation we've got.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the funny things that I have witnessed is that Josh D'Amaro, the president of Disney Parks and Experiences, he had come out and said that none of the frontline workers at the theme parks were going to be released. And so that was put out as sort of a virtue statement for the company, right? We're not going to fire the people who are making the meals and cleaning the beds in the hotels. We're not going to fire the people who are making your cotton candy. And what was so funny about that statement is that a lot of people, they really ate that up, like, oh, thank goodness, they're not going to get rid of those cast members on the front. And I was like, no, what that means is that the people who put all the hard work to make it up to just that next tier, right? They just made it up to barely being a manager. Nope, you're gone because you make just a little bit more. So we're going to get rid of you and we're going to keep all the lowest paying positions. I thought, what a way to spin something that is so awful into something that so many people buy into immediately, like, yay, Disney, good job.
This is the painful acts of corporate culture. But it is certainly not what I think people in Hollywood expected when Mr. Iger returned, that this would be the kind of post that would come out. Again, so we have a recruiter here. And so their position is HR. Their position is to bring people in the company. Ms. Martin goes right back to the early post we said from last summer, that in order to ideologically realign the company, you have to control who brings people in and who lets people go, right? So this is someone who's bringing people into the company and has been let go, and it appears to be a minority as well. And, again, I take no pleasure. I myself am a minority. I don't believe that this person was let go because they're a minority. They may have been let go because they were identified as someone who wasn't going to be on board or wasn't going to be helpful in their efforts to change who's being recruited.
On behalf of these individuals we've looked at, they really are handling this about as well as you would want them to publicly. They say the right things and they're very
They're not
kind.
insulting the company.
They don't burn bridges. So all of those are what I would advise for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, they're sharing their disappointment. That's human. But again, both of those, we've now had 2 confirmations of DEI and HR. So why don't we go through a couple more? Yesterday was a difficult day for me. My colleagues and leaders, me along with a few others, were informed that our, quote, projects are ending early, marking this as my last day here at the Walt Disney Company. Wow,
that was effective immediately then.
Yeah, they're just basically, so you got to go.
Wow.
You got to go. Here we go. This is a team of industry experts, market intelligence, and storytellers. So much. This is a sourcing team, which suggests to me HR again. You're sourcing. How would you define that, Valiant? Sourcing sounds like an HR.
It sounds like, yeah, I'm going to sit here and recruit writers, storytellers, actors, personnel, production staff. I mean, what do you know? What else you'd be sourcing if not then to reference experts, intelligent storytellers, all this.
Yeah, so, and if we look at the hashtags at the bottom of her comment, Disney open to work, quote, here we go, hashtag talent acquisition, hashtag development, hashtag recruiting. So again, this is HR again. So the people that are being immediately let go are the ones that are in charge of bringing people into the company. So now we go to our final one here, Ms. Brianna Nichols, who is HBCU Outreach and Engagement, Disney on the Yard, Outreach and Engagement. That feels a little bit like a DEI type of you're connecting with a community kind of thing.
She mentions in the description as well. Yeah.
Yeah. For those who don't know, we should probably define the acronym HBCU if you'd like to.
Please do define it. I don't actually know what it means. Please tell me what it means.
Oh, it's historically Black colleges and universities.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't know that. That my ignorance has now been at least allayed for the moment. So okay, now it's exactly what that's. So if she's going to historically Black colleges and universities, then that's a specific DEI, affirmative action. Reaching out.
They're recruiting students from these colleges to come work at Disney based on DEI requirements.
Okay.
That's what that is.
Please send all remote TA campus recruiting DEI and or program management opportunities my way. Thank you in advance. Open work recruiting. So yeah, so this is clearly a DEI. So we've got two people clearly related to the DEI system, two people that clearly related to just the HR recruiting system that may overlap that, but so these are the people that are putting themselves out there. These are the four people that this source sent to me. I'm sure there are dozens of others. I'm not hearing of people, I think one of these people was at DMed, but they were recruiting in DMed. So I'm not hearing of other things in the initial rounds, unless you're hearing other information.
No. I mean, I think you're right on the money that this is where Disney seems to be going. I would imagine that there are some people that work in these areas that are rather toxic and difficult to work with. All of these people seem lovely, so I don't know why Disney went after them. Take out the others. Take out the others, Disney. Find the people that are
but
no fun.
You hit it, Pro, because it's not personal. Then it's about removing a division, and that's not a personal thing. It's about your division is being phased out.
Yeah, we don't know how many more from that division may be involved in this or not. I mean, there could be, I don't know. There could be 1,000 other recruiters or Disney in the DEI department for all I know. But I mean, it just goes to show that, look, these cuts are coming across the board. And we've talked about this, all three of us now for some time, is that the money has to win out at some point here, because there's only so long to where things like live sports, ESPN, even the parks division, I mean, you cannot keep making up for bad decisions on content and programming that continue to cost more money than virtually every other studio out there to produce similar content, yet has been yielding smaller and smaller and smaller returns, in some cases half of competitive studios. Like we always make the joke, you got Puss in Boots out there. Congratulations, $430 million to date. It's been on PVOD for over a month. And that's more than double what Lightyear made for less than half the cost. I mean, it's stuff like that. Yeah. That kind of thing. Let's not even talk about how bad Strange World was. So eventually you have to get to the point, like we heard David Zaslav today on their earnings call for Warner Brothers that we were covering live. Zaslav, I don't think Zaslav minds spending a couple of $1 million to make a program like Velma. He knows that a lot of people aren't going to like it, but there's an audience out there that it can sell to. And for a couple of $1 million, it's worth it. But spending $90 million on a Velma project would be clinically insane because it's guaranteed to lose money. There's not a big enough audience for that kind of stuff.
That's a fantastic point. Let me insert here. That's a fantastic point. In fact, I had not even thought of that. So to put that into perspective for everybody, what that means is you can spend a few million on Velma, and if it gets all the hate in the world, so be it. You lost a few million, whatever. But you don't do what Disney's doing and put $250 million on that and call it Lightyear.
That's it.
Fantastic point, because we look at it and we're like, oh, these are equal. Here's a company doing Lightyear. Here's a company doing Velma. They're both the same. No. It has everything to do with the budget that's behind it.
That's it.
And look, and there are people of a politically progressive, philosophical approach and who want things marketed to them. They have every right to have things made for them, right? As things are made for their market, it should be designed for the size of the market and their demonstrated responsiveness. And so, absolutely, if I'm a good business person, I'm making stuff for them too. I'm making it at the scale that they've proven that they're willing to spend.
Indeed, indeed. Well, I'm looking forward to see what comes out of this story, because I think there's certainly more to come. We've got the annual stockholder meeting for Disney coming up here in about a month, I think in early April. So this is going to be a fascinating one to see. I'm sure we'll have a lot more news at that point. Certainly there's going to be more announcements coming forward in terms of future Disney projects that we know little or completely nothing about at this point. So interesting to see, but I think we're going to continue to see a change here. Iger has to get the ship righted, especially with the expenditures on DTC, direct-to-consumer stuff, Disney Plus. They can't keep losing $1 billion a quarter, and that's a big ship to turn in a short amount of time at this point. And maybe some of these cuts are going to come from, I think, a lot of these projects that they're just spending too much money on. And putting the politics in them is not getting them the returns that they want. So appreciate y'all being here. We're going to keep an eye on this one. Thank y'all for watching, and make sure you stay tuned here. Make sure you check out Kamran Pasha on his Patreon page. Of course, the link will be in the description below. Check out WDW Pro on thatparkplace.com. And of course, Pro's new YouTube channel, which has taken off like crazy, and we're going to kind of try to keep that going. And of course, I've got a second channel now. All the live clips go to. We'll leave a link to Renegade Online as well. Thank you all so much for being here, and until next time, take care.